The vanishing reply, Sarah was a creature of habit. Her cozy apartment was her haven, a sanctuary where she could retreat from the chaos of her university life. Her evenings followed a comforting routine: finish her assignments, brew a cup of tea, and sink into her bed while endlessly scrolling through Snapchat. It wasn't the most productive use of her time, but it was a welcome escape from reality. That night, as a chilly wind howled outside, Sarah wrapped herself in her favorite oversized blanket. The pale glow of her laptop screen illuminated her dimly lit room. She was typing the last few lines of her philosophy paper when her phone buzzed beside her. Picking it up, she noticed an unfamiliar username pop up in her Snapchat notifications. No one exists. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Random ads weren't uncommon, but something about the name made her pause. The curiosity gnawed at her. She reasoned it was probably a glitch or spam account. Tentatively, she opened the snap. The screen flickered as a video played. It was grainy, poorly lit, and eerily quiet. It showed an empty room. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if moved by an unseen force. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the floorboards looked damp and rotting. The caption read, "Can you hear me?" Sarah frowned. It felt off, unsettling in a way she couldn't quite articulate. But she rationalized it must have been someone's idea of a prank. Perhaps one of her friends thought it would be funny to scare her. She replied with a quick selfie and a typed message. "Who is this?" Almost immediately, another snap arrived. She hesitated before opening it. This time, it was a photo. Her heart sank. It was her own bedroom, her desk, her bed, the half-empty mug of tea by her laptop, all captured from a high angle as if someone had been perched in the corner of the ceiling. Caption read, "I've been waiting." Sarah froze, her mind racing. She glanced around the room, every shadow suddenly menacing. The corner of the ceiling in the photo was empty, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. "Okay, not funny," she muttered, her voice trembling. She quickly blocked the account and tossed her phone aside. Shoving her unease to the back of her mind, she tried to focus on finishing her paper. Yet every creak of the apartment and every gust of wind against the window made her jump. Moments later, her phone buzzed again. Her heart skipped a beat. She picked it up and saw a new Snap notification, this time from an unknown string of numbers, not a username. The app opened itself, the screen glitching briefly before displaying another video. The video feed was live. It showed her room, exactly as it was now, but something was off. The lighting seemed darker, and the perspective was distorted, as if viewed through a cracked lens. Sarah stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then she saw movement, a faint shadow flickering in the corner. Her blood ran cold. "Who the hell is this?" she screamed, throwing her phone onto the bed. But as she turned toward the corner of the room, there was nothing there. The air felt heavier now, colder. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if the room itself was alive, watching her. Gathering her courage, Sarah retrieved her phone. Another snap had arrived. Her hand trembled as she opened it. It was a photo of her closet door, slightly ajar. The caption read, "I'm here." The closet door creaked. Sarah let out a sharp gasp, grabbing the nearest object, a pair of scissors from her desk. She stared at the closet, waiting for something, anything to happen. The door remained still, yet the oppressive silence felt like it was pressing down on her chest. Her phone buzzed again. Against her better judgment, she opened the snap. It was another live video feed. This time the camera was inside the closet. The view was obscured by hanging clothes, but at the end of the frame, she saw a pale hand slowly reach out. She screamed and bolted for the bedroom door, yanking it open and running into the hallway. Her roommate, Emma, was out of town for the weekend, leaving Sarah alone in the apartment. She cursed herself for not going to her parents' house like she'd planned. She grabbed her phone, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She tried to call Emma, but the call wouldn't go through. Every attempt ended with static, and then a distorted voice whispering, "Sarah." The lights in the apartment flickered, and a sudden crash came from her room. Against her better judgment, she stepped back toward the doorway. Her closet door was wide open now, the clothes inside swaying as if disturbed by a breeze. But the air was deathly still. Her phone buzzed. Another snap. This time it was a close-up of her own face, taken from behind her as she stood frozen in the doorway. The caption read, "Turn around." Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't move. It felt as though an invisible force was rooting her to the spot. Slowly, she turned her head. Nothing. The hallway was empty. She let out a shaky breath, backing away toward the front door. But as she reached for the lock, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. "Leave me alone," she shouted, spinning around, scissors raised. But there was no one there. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't want to look, but something compelled her to. The new snap showed her apartment door, and written in what looked like blood were the words, "You can't leave." Tears streamed down her face as she tried the lock again, but it wouldn't budge. She screamed and pounded on the door, praying one of her neighbors would hear her. But the hallway outside was unnaturally quiet. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. Suddenly, her phone's camera turned on by itself, the flash illuminating the dark apartment. The screen showed a live feed of her, but the reflection in the glass door behind her revealed a shadowy figure standing just inches away. Its face was featureless, save for two glowing eyes. The last thing Sarah saw was her phone's screen as the shadow lunged at her. The next morning, Emma returned to find the apartment empty. Sarah's belongings were undisturbed, but her phone lay shattered on the floor. Emma picked it up and noticed something strange. Sarah's Snapchat account was still active, posting a looping story of a dark room with faint whispers. The caption, "Can you hear me?" The disappearing friend. Jake was the kind of friend everyone relied on. He had an easygoing nature and a knack for staying calm under pressure. That's why, when he received an unsettling Snapchat from Mia, he didn't hesitate to act. It was around midnight on a Friday. Jake had stayed in, scrolling through his social media feed, while his friends were out partying. A notification from Mia lit up his screen. The snap was odd, blurry, as if taken in haste. It showed moonlit trees and what looked like a trail leading into the forest. The caption read, "Help me. It's in the woods." Jake's stomach knotted. Mia wasn't one for pranks, and the urgency in her message was palpable. He immediately replied, "Where are you? What's going on?" But there was no response. He checked her location on SnapMap and saw her Bitmoji fixed deep in the forest outside of town. He grabbed his car keys and a flashlight, dialing her number as he headed out. It rang but went straight to voicemail. The unease grew as he reached the edge of the forest. Mia's car was parked haphazardly on a dirt road, the driver's door open. The headlights were still on, casting eerie shadows across the surrounding trees. Her purse sat on the passenger seat, her phone missing. Jake shone his flashlight into the woods, calling her name. Only the wind answered, rustling the leaves above. His phone buzzed, a new snap from Mia. It was a video taken from behind him, showing him standing next to her car, flashlight in hand. The angle suggested someone or something was watching him. The caption read, "It's too late." Jake spun around, shining his light wildly through the trees. "Mia, this isn't funny," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. But there was no response. His phone buzzed again. The snap showed a trail through the woods. In the distance, he could barely make out a faint glowing light. The caption read, "Follow me." Against his better judgment, Jake stepped into the forest. His flashlight beam danced over gnarled roots and fallen branches. The deeper he ventured, the more oppressive the air became. The usual sounds of the forest, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence. As he followed the trail, his phone buzzed again. The snap was another video, this time showing Mia. She was sitting on the ground, her knees drawn to her chest. Her face was streaked with tears, and her lips moved as though she were whispering something. The camera panned to the side, revealing a shadowy figure standing behind her. The caption read, "Hurry." Jake's heart raced. "Mia!" he yelled, breaking into a run. The trail seemed endless, twisting and turning in ways that didn't feel natural. Finally, he stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and its wooden frame leaning precariously to one side. The porch creaked under his weight as he approached the door, which was slightly ajar. His phone buzzed again. The snap showed the cabin's interior, a dark, dusty room with a single chair in the center. The caption read, "Inside." Jake hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to turn back, but the thought of Mia in danger spurred him forward. He pushed the door open, his flashlight revealing the desolate space inside. Dust hung in the air, and the faint smell of decay made his stomach churn. "Mia," he called out, his voice echoing. No response. His phone buzzed once more. The snap showed a live video of him inside the cabin. The camera panned slowly to the left, focusing on a dark corner where a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. The caption read, "Don't turn around." Jake froze, his breath hitching. He felt the air grow colder, a presence pressing against his back. He gripped his flashlight tighter, sweat dripping down his brow. Slowly he turned. The light illuminated the corner, revealing nothing but dust and cobwebs. He let out a shaky breath, relief flooding him, until he noticed the faint reflection in the cracked glass of the cabin's lone window. A towering figure loomed behind him, its body unnaturally thin, its face devoid of features except for two hollow, glowing eyes. Jake screamed and spun around, but the room was empty. The cabin door slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. His phone buzzed relentlessly now, the screen flashing with notifications. He opened Snapchat, desperate for a clue, but the app glitched, displaying distorted images of the woods, Mia's face, and the cabin. A final snap appeared. It was a photo of him, standing frozen in the cabin. A final snap appeared. It was a photo of him, standing frozen in the cabin. The caption read, "Stay with us." The light on his phone flickered before going out entirely. Jake's screams echoed through the forest, then abruptly stopped. The next morning, Mia's car was still parked on the dirt road. A search party combed the forest, but found no trace of either Jake or Mia. Days turned into weeks, and the town whispered rumors of hauntings and disappearances tied to the woods. Then, Jake's Snapchat account began posting cryptic stories. The videos showed dark trails through the forest, faint whispers of his voice calling Mia's name. Occasionally, viewers reported seeing fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure in the background. The final story was a live feed of the cabin, its door slightly ajar. The caption read, "We're waiting." Snapstreak with the dead, Ella and Lily had always been close, cousins who felt more like sisters. They spent countless summers together, laughing, exploring, and dreaming about their futures. As they grew older and their lives grew busier, their daily Snapchat messages became their way of staying connected. They were proud of their Snapstreak, which had recently reached an impressive 365 days. But something changed on the night of their Snapstreak anniversary. It was exactly 3:33 a.m. when Ella's phone buzzed on her nightstand. She groggily reached for it, expecting a funny meme or another random snap from Lily. But the snap that appeared on her screen made her heart skip a beat. The photo was dark and eerie, showing a decrepit room with peeling wallpaper and a single window barely letting in light. The caption read, "Cold." Ella rubbed her eyes, convinced she must be dreaming. She replied, "Where are you? Are you okay?" Moments later, another snap arrived. This one showed a cracked mirror, with Lily faintly visible in the reflection. Her face looked pale, and her eyes were sunken. The caption read, "Do you see her too?" Chills ran down Ella's spine. She immediately called Lily, but the line went straight to voicemail. Her unease grew as she stared at the snaps. Something about the images felt off, like they were wrong on a fundamental level. The room in the photos didn't look like anywhere Lily would be. It looked old, abandoned. The next morning, Ella texted Lily, demanding an explanation. To her shock, Lily claimed she hadn't sent any snaps. "My phone's been dead since yesterday," Lily insisted over the phone, her voice tinged with confusion. Ella didn't know what to believe. She tried to shake off the experience as a bizarre glitch, but the sense of unease lingered. That night, the snap started again. At 3:33 a.m., her phone buzzed. The photo showed an overgrown graveyard, with crumbling headstones barely visible through the mist. The caption read, "Come find me." Ella stared at the image, her fingers trembling. She recognized the graveyard. It was part of an old, abandoned churchyard on the outskirts of town. Compelled by an inexplicable feeling, Ella decided to go there the next day. The following afternoon, the weather turned gloomy. Thick clouds hung low in the sky, and the air was cold and damp. Ella drove out to the churchyard, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The area was deserted, the road leading to the site overgrown and barely passable. When she arrived, she parked her car by the rusty gates and stepped out, her heart pounding. The churchyard was just as eerie as the photo had suggested. The graves were ancient, their inscriptions weathered and nearly illegible. Moss covered the stones, and vines snaked up the crumbling remains of the church. Ella's phone buzzed again. The snap was a video, showing the graveyard from her exact perspective. The camera panned slowly, stopping at a headstone near the far corner. The caption read, "This way." She hesitated, a deep sense of dread settling in her chest. But she couldn't ignore the pull she felt, like an invisible thread drawing her closer. She walked through the graves, her footsteps crunching on the overgrown path. When she reached the headstone, her breath caught in her throat. It had Lily's name carved into it. The date of death was the day before. Ella's hands shook as she stepped closer. Her phone buzzed once more. The snap was a close-up of the grave, but something had changed. The ground in front of it was disturbed, as if freshly dug. The caption read, "You're next." Panic surged through Ella. She turned to run, but the path behind her seemed longer, twisted, as if the graveyard was shifting around her. The air grew colder, and the shadows of the trees seemed to reach for her. Her phone buzzed again, the sound sharp and jarring in the silence. The snap was another video. This time it showed Ella herself, running through the graveyard, her eyes wide with terror. The camera angle suggested it was being filmed from above, watching her from the shadows. A low whisper reached her ears, faint at first but growing louder. It repeated her name over and over in a voice that sounded eerily like Lily's. She stumbled, her phone slipping from her hand and skidding across the ground. When she picked it up, the screen was cracked, but another snap appeared. It showed the inside of the old church, its pews broken and its altar covered in dust. The caption read, "Come inside." Ella's instincts screamed at her to leave, but her body felt like it wasn't her own. Her legs carried her toward the church despite her fear. The heavy wooden doors groaned as she pushed them open. Inside, the air was suffocatingly cold. Faint light streaming through the broken stained glass windows cast distorted colors on the walls. At the far end of the room stood a figure. It was Lily, or at least it looked like her. "Lily?" Ella called out, her voice echoing. The figure turned slowly. Its face was pale, its eyes hollow. A chilling smile spread across its lips. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered. Ella's phone buzzed in her hand. The snap was a video of the figure standing in the exact spot where it was now. The camera zoomed in on its face, and the caption read, "Stay with me." The doors behind Ella slammed shut. The last thing she saw was the figure lunging toward her. The next morning, Ella's car was found abandoned outside the graveyard. Her family and friends searched for her, but there was no trace. A few days later, strange activity began on Ella's Snapchat account. Friends received cryptic snaps showing the graveyard, the church, and fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure. One by one, those who viewed the snaps reported hearing whispers calling their names at night. The final snap on Ella's story was a live video feed of the old church. The screen flickered, and faint writing appeared across the screen. "We're waiting.